For the past 12 months, I've been travelling Japan, looking for every known location from Hayao Miyazaki's Spirited Away. From the real-life locations used in the movie, to the ones which capture the essence of Studio Ghibli's spirit world. And all that travelling has led me here, to a small, rural village high in the mountains of central Japan. Because that may not look like it, this place was one of Hayao Miyazaki's biggest inspirations for Spirited Away. Or, more specifically, an event was. One which takes place here on one night per year. Perhaps the most remote and obscure festival from Japan's ancient past. And when the sun goes down, I'll be able to see it firsthand. Because I have come here to give you a rare insight into what exactly inspired Miyazaki to make Spirited Away, and what it can teach us about the meaning behind Studio Ghibli's most iconic masterpiece. So let me take you on this journey. Spirited Away is a film which needs no introduction. Since its release in 2001, it's become regarded as one of the greatest animated films of all time, with a string of awards.
And the Oscar goes to Spirited Away, Hayao Miyazaki.
Stage adaptations, and becoming the highest grossing film in Studio Ghibli's history. Which is why it's actually remarkable that the original inspiration of such an iconic movie is still largely unknown to even the most dedicated Ghibli fans. But in order to fully understand why this festival is so significant to Spirited Away, we need some context, starting with Miyazaki's creative process, and how he went about designing the world of Spirited Away. So whilst I'm going to take you all across Japan, to every location from the movie, I want to start here first. This is Studio Ghibli, and the reason I want to start here is because the design of their studio can actually tell us a lot about Miyazaki's mindset and how he approaches his movies. It was set up in 1992, after the studio's decision to move their head office from the busy streets of Kichijoji to this quieter, more residential area in Koganai. And almost every detail of this place was designed by Miyazaki himself. He built it with the intention of fostering a more soothing creative environment for the Ghibli staff to grow over the long term. And in his designs for the building, Miyazaki made sure the space would have an abundance of natural light and greenery, in keeping with the environmental values we see in his movies. But perhaps the most noticeable thing about Studio Ghibli is how small it is. Unlike animation rivals Pixar, who utilise large teams with giant sites for their production, Studio Ghibli is much smaller scale, and is divided into multiple small buildings across this neighbourhood, from the main studio and Studio 2 to Ghibli's own preschool and Miyazaki's atelier.
And I'm actually a little bit nervous to film this because Miyazaki literally just looked out the window at us filming, but this house here is actually Miyazaki's private studio. It's where he comes when he wants to storyboard or create concept art, and it's just within a few minutes walk of the main studio and his own home.
And the reason I'm showing you all this is because it's so crucial to Miyazaki's creative process. Just as he likes to create a neighbourhood feel to his studio, when it comes to making his movies, he draws from these surroundings for inspiration, whether it be the staff members of Ghibli or places he has been to in his life. And so, in the year 2000, when he needed the settings for his next movie, Spirited Away, Miyazaki turned first to a location in the area's local park.
What you're looking at is the Edo Tokyo Open Air Architectural Museum, and it's one of the most important Spirited Away locations in all of Japan. It's a small neighbourhood of former Japanese buildings, opened in 1993 with the aim of preserving historic Japanese architecture for future generations.
Miyazaki would often come here to take walks during Spirited Away's production, saying how seeing these buildings in the evening light would often make him feel nostalgic for his own childhood. And you need only look at this place to recognise its influence on Spirited Away, because many of the buildings which feature near the start of the film are actually taken from here directly.
For example, the curved-shaped roofs we see in the background of the ghost town are modelled on this kitchenware store from the 1930s, whilst the restaurant in which Chihiro's parents are turned into pigs was likely inspired by this bar from nearly 100 years earlier. Even at the end of the museum street sits a bathhouse, much in the same way as it does in the movie. And even later on, the hundreds of small wooden drawers in Kamaji's boiler room actually come from this 1920s stationery store, where the drawers were once used to hold brushes, ink, and calligraphy supplies. And it's this mixing of buildings and details from different time periods which contributes to the familiar yet unusual feel of Spirited Away's world, which in many ways feels like a melting pot of Japanese history. And the easiest place to see this is the bathhouse, which was modelled on 3 structures from totally different time periods. The first was Dogo Onsen in Matsuyama. With its long history spanning back over a century, its exterior structure shaped some of the more traditional elements of the bathhouse. Whilst the second, the considerably more modern Meguro Gajon Hotel in Tokyo, was opened around 900 years later in 1928. Its lavish interiors and gold corridors inspired some of the more luxurious areas of the bathhouse, which balance Japanese and Western styles. And then there's the bathhouse's third inspiration, which sits in a small, picturesque onsen town that Miyazaki liked to visit for holidays. Here lies a 400-year-old hotel known as Sekizenkan Ryokan, one of the oldest hot spring hotels in Japan. Of all the bathhouse inspirations, this one resembles the movie the most, with its angular wooden frame and iconic red bridge overlooking a flowing stream below. Even at night, its windows emit the same inviting glow that draws customers through its doors.
But whilst these architectural inspirations are obviously important, it's not the only element which makes the spirit world feel as rich as it is. For example, the film's Japanese title, Sen to Chihiro no Kamikakushi, translates more literally in English to The Spiriting Away of Sen and Chihiro, which would be collectively understood by Japanese audiences as more of a fairy tale type movie, a story founded in Japanese folklore.
Because the very idea of being spirited away, what's known in Japanese as kamikakushi, is a phenomenon buried deep within Japanese myth. Its origins go back 13 centuries, to the folktale of Urashima Taro, a young fisherman who rode off into the sea on the back of a giant sea turtle to visit the palace of the Dragon King. This was the first in a long line of kamikakushi stories, where children disappear from this world at the hands of spirits, and it's not the only influence of Japanese folklore in Spirited Away, because many of the beings which populate the world are based on real folklore kami. For example, Kamaji, the spirit of the boiler room, is a character with 6 elongated arms, who resembles a spider-like demon known as a Sujigumo. Traditionally, they were thought of as creatures who dwell in dark, dingy places, such as the boiler room. But historically, Sujigumo was also used as a derogatory term for those who defied central authority, as reflected in Kamaji's defiance of Yubaba by helping Chihiro on her journey. And even Yubaba herself is reminiscent in both design and name to a Yama-uba, meaning mountain witch, who were evil demons endowed with supernatural powers. and would devour humans who came upon their path. But in some tales, the Yama-uba were conversely portrayed as benevolent spirits, who bestow good fortune on those who were kind to them, as depicted in Yubaba's twin sister, Zeniba.
私たち二人で一人前なのに気が合わなくてね。ほら、あの人ハイカラじゃないじゃない。
And so, the world of Spirited Away is clearly not just a mix of Japanese architectural history, but it's folklore too, showing how Miyazaki wanted to use this film to explore Japanese cultural history.
At this point then, it's clear that Miyazaki designed Spirited Away to be a celebration of Japanese traditional culture. But this is only one part of a bigger picture, for at the heart of the story lies a much deeper thematic message. And before we can even get to the movie's most fundamental inspiration, we must first unpack what exactly this deeper meaning is.
なんだ、モルタル製か。結構新しい建物だよ。
In a sense, the themes of Spirited Away are quite different from Miyazaki's usual works. Because whereas movies would normally revolve around a conflict between humanity and nature, Spirited Away pivots instead towards humanity's relationship with the past. Following her parents into an ominous passageway at the start of the film, the family emerge through into a suspiciously deserted building, one which seems to have not seen people for a very long time. But before we can work out what exactly this place is, the father identifies it specifically as an abandoned theme park that went out of business in the early 90s. And whilst this may seem like a strange choice of setting for a film founded in Japanese spirituality, it's actually incredibly important, because the theme park is reminiscent of thousands of similar sites you will find all over Japan, known in Japanese as haikyo, meaning ruins. And like the theme park of Miyazaki's creation, the abandonment of these places are often attributed to the bursting of Japan's bubble economy.
You see, after World War II, Japan entered a period of spectacular economic growth, a surge of modernisation and construction, and across Japan came new businesses and buildings, both independent and government funded. But then in around 1991, this period of spectacular growth, known as Japan's bubble economy, dramatically burst, leaving behind thousands of buildings to linger in the periphery of Japanese society.
By setting the opening sequence in an abandoned theme park caused by this great economic crash, Miyazaki is highlighting the consequences of modern society's persistent drive for progress, and showing how our modern values lead us down a perpetually destructive path. To put it in his own words, we are still in an era of great convulsions. I really feel that this weird and ridiculous monstrosity, what I'd call a mass consumption civilization, has started thrashing about in its death throes. And this dislike of mass consumption civilization becomes even clearer through the story's characters, many of whom are shown to be corrupted by the modern world. The first example would be the river spirit, whose body is so befouled by pollution that he is mistaken for a grotesque stink spirit, the story coming from Miyazaki's own experience of cleaning out a local river. And then there's the recurring theme of greed. The greediness of Chihiro's parents, who feast on the food of spirits, has them transformed into pigs, whilst the insatiable greed of the bathhouse workers encourages No-Face to gradually devolve into a monstrosity. What these examples all show is Miyazaki's disapproval of modern Japan, seeing its increasing tendencies towards pollution and greed to present a great threat to its future, as warned through these grotesque transformations. And while Spirited Away's world building seems to openly celebrate Japan's traditional culture, these story elements paint a different picture altogether, depicting modern Japan as this place of corrupt values with a doomed future. Speaking on his intention behind the movie, Miyazaki said, "Today's children are surrounded by a high-tech world and increasingly lose sight of their roots in the midst of so many shallow industrial products. We need to show what incredibly rich traditions we have. And from this angle, the story's meaning begins to make more sense. In order for this next generation of children to navigate this chaotic modern world, we must start looking to the past, to find meaning in the traditions which humanity has begun to forget. But really, I'm still not sure this is the point of Spirited Away at all. Which leads me onto my final destination, and what I believe to be the most important Spirited Away location in all of Japan. Because after months of travelling across Japan, I discovered something during my research. An old interview from Hayao Miyazaki in 2001, in which he said that a major inspiration for Spirited Away actually came from a documentary he found on TV one night, that told of an ancient festival which ultimately inspired him to create the world of the film. And after finding the exact festival he was talking about, I decided to pay a visit, bringing me here, to the village of Shimaguri no Sato in Nagano, which sits high in the mountains at over 1,000 meters above sea level. And with a tiny population of just 50, Shimaguri village is easily one of the most isolated settlements you'll find in Japan today. But on one night per year, as night falls over the valley, this quiet village comes alive for an event known as the Shimosuke Festival. By all accounts, what you're seeing is one of Japan's rarest festivals. In fact, the locals were surprised I even knew about it, as pretty much everyone you're seeing comes from this village alone. Yet they were more than happy to welcome me to join for the night ahead. The ceremony consists of a series of prayers and dances guided by the village elders, all in dedication to the local spirits of the region. It's a tradition which has spanned back through generations of ancestors for hundreds of years, but it may not be apparent just from watching quite how deep this festival's history really is. The festival's origins are uncertain, but according to folklore it dates back to Japan's Heian period, around 794 AD. During the harsh winter months, when the leaves fell and snow covered the mountains, the villagers believed this was down to the weakening energy of the sun, which was seen as the source of all life. And so when the sun appeared to fade in winter, so too came the disappearance of life itself. The Shimosuke Festival thus originally marked the turning point of the season, a celebration where the villagers would gather and pray for the sun to revive all life at winter's end, a concept known in Japanese as Yomigairu. And fundamentally this ties deeply into Shintoism, a Japanese religion which emphasizes a reverence for nature, and the belief that spirits reside in all natural elements, something you'll have often seen in the works of Hayao Miyazaki. At its core then, the festival is a prayer for spiritual restoration, embodying this village's enduring commitment to preserving tradition and faith. But really, what drew Miyazaki to this festival specifically was the striking imagery of its unique central concept, which provided fundamental inspiration for Spirited Away. For over 1,000 years, the festival has consisted of several stages, the first being the pouring of the water. The central cauldrons are slowly filled, and the water is blessed by the local priests, who purify it. Because soon, the guests start to arrive. Summoned from all over Japan, the gods descend on the shrine. It is believed that up to 281 gods from across Japan attend this festival every year, and it's all for what comes next. the main event of the Shimosuke Festival which inspired Spirited Away, where the crowd watches on as the gods submerge in the purified water and take a bath. It was, of course, this exact image of gods taking a bath in this festival which inspired Miyazaki to create the bathhouse for spirits, the central setting of Spirited Away. But more than that, the Shimosuke Festival is primarily a ritual of purification, a ceremony intended to cleanse the gods of all sin and impurity, and restore all living things to their natural state. And the same can be said of Spirited Away. On her journey through the bathhouse, Chihiro repeatedly encounters corrupted characters and purifies them. The river spirit is cleansed of his pollution. No-Face is cured of his monstrous greed. Haku is freed of the curse inflicted by Yubaba. And Chihiro's parents are turned back into humans. Throughout the whole story, characters of the bathhouse are purified and restored by Chihiro to their natural state, much in the same way as the Shimosuke Festival. This festival, and its impact on Spirited Away, seems to reflect a desire of Miyazaki's for healing in a country which he felt had strayed from its traditional values. And yet, I can't help but feel Spirited Away has something more to say.
千尋って私の名だわ。
湯婆婆は相手の名を奪って支配するんだ。私はどうしても思い出せないんだ。
Beneath this layer of pessimism that the world has lost its way, there's a real sense of optimism. Because Spirited Away is not a movie made to criticize modern Japan. At its core, it's a story told for young girls like Chihiro, who are reluctant to accept where life may take them. Her whole story is founded on a predicate of fear for her future and overcoming this fear by believing in herself, something which becomes most obvious in the movie's most iconic scene. Many have questioned the meaning behind the train scene of Spirited Away. Its abstract nature has sparked many theories as to what it represents. To me, it's time, and the inevitability of change. Like a train riding ocean tracks across the vast expanse of sea, life has a way of taking us where we need to go, and we must accept it. Chihiro, the girl who was so timid and afraid to wander into the unknown, now seems resigned to her fate, knowing that she can meet the challenge of wherever the train may lead. Because Spirited Away is not about denying the present or fearing the future. It's a story about accepting change and understanding that your past experiences never truly leave you, because they are exactly what has made you who you are today. And as Chihiro leaves this world, exiting through the same tunnel which led her in the first place, it's not clear whether or not she remembers the journey she has been on. But as she stares back into the darkness, we realise that it doesn't really matter. Because in her eyes we see there's a newfound strength to move forwards.